I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to create a frequency distribution or frequency table and histogram, but even before that, how to get descriptive statistics. Okay, so here I have a set of data. It's the number of hours that a person spends studying each week, and we have 31 elements in our data set. So the first thing we need to do is we need to turn on the add-in, the data analysis tool pack add-in. So go to File, go to Options, go to Add-ins. Under Manage Add-ins, click Go, and the very first one, Analysis Tool Pack. Check that, hit OK. Now if you go to Data, you see Data Analysis up here. Okay, so first I'll just put my cursor into this cell C2. We're going to click on Data Analysis. We're going to select Descriptive Statistics. Hit OK. Input range. Those are the values that you want to input. And you can choose either to have a label in the first row or not a label in the first row. But if you were to highlight, so for example, with your cursor in the box for input range, highlight all your data. I'm going to include the label this time. If you do, make sure you check labels in first row. Our data is grouped by columns, not by rows. Okay, so columns. Output range. You now have to put your cursor in the box for output range. And this just needs one cell. You could put it in a new worksheet if you wanted to. That would be fine as well. So here, C2. So that's where it's going to go. And what I want is the summary statistics. So you check that and click OK. So now if it's not wide enough, you can make this smaller, highlight both, select in the middle, drag it over. And so here's all your information, your summary statistics, descriptive statistics, mean, standard error, which is different than standard deviation. Here's standard deviation, max and min, that's going to help you figure out your class width, and then count is 31. Okay, so we have our descriptive statistics, which you can then highlight this and copy and paste this into a Word document if you needed to. Okay, now we're going to try to figure out our frequency table, but the first thing we need is our class width. So I'm actually going to physically type in class width. In the next cell to the right, I'm going to do a calculation, so I need to start with an equal sign. And what I'm going to do is you can either select the cell that the maximum value is in, or just type it, which is fine. But you need to start with a parentheses. And you're going to do 9, which is the maximum value, minus 0, which is the minimum value, close parentheses, and divide by the number of classes you want to use. So there is a rule for classes, but with data that's around 31, it would be appropriate to use 5 classes. If your data were to exceed 32 values, then you want to use 6 classes. Okay, so if we have 31 elements, we're going to use 5. If we have more than 32 but less than 64, we would use 6 classes. So I'm dividing by 5 classes, and I get 1.8. Now remember, we want to round up and round to a number that is easy to use. So I'm going to change this and say my class width will equal 2. Okay, now off to the side somewhere, I'm going to start kind of building my frequency distribution. And you go from lower limit to lower limit for your classes. Since my minimum value is 0, I'm going to use 0, but if my minimum value was something like 27, you might want to use 26 or something lower than your minimum value, but something that you can use easily with your class width. So 0 will be my first lower limit, then 2, right? Because remember, class width is determined by subtracting consecutive lower limits. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So here's my 5 classes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For upper limit, I'm going to use, so for my first class's upper limit, I'm going to use 1.9 because the next lower limit, or the lower limit of the next class is 2. So I'm just going to use 0.1 less than the lower limit of the next class. So next I would use 3.9. Next I would use 5.9. Next I would use 7.9. Now there would be a 10 here, right? So I'm going to use 9.9 on my next one. These are called bins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these, Control C, over here, and then delete. Well, you could put it over here if you wanted to, but you don't need that anymore. We need the bins. So the bins are all the upper limits. That's how you figure out what your bins are. It's the upper limit of each class. So we have 5 bins. Now we need to drag this data and put them in these bins. So with data analysis, you actually create the histogram and the frequency table at the same time, which is really nice. So choose data analysis now. Choose histogram. OK. Input range. Now this time, so that's the numbers you're going to input. Only select the numbers. All right. Bin range. Those are the upper limits that you just calculated. So select those. Output range. Make sure your cursor's in there. I'm going to put it here, right next to my hours of studying. And I do want to create a chart as well. So chart output. All right, so it gives me, so you don't even really need those numbers anymore because it gives you a new frequency distribution. Okay, now leave them there though, because it's using those values. Now I just need to fill in the lower limits again. So 0 up to 1.9, and then it was 2 up to 3.9, and then it was 4 up to 5.9, and it was then 6 up to 7.9, and 8 up to 9.9. It gave me this more, but I don't even need it. So we're going to delete that off. Okay? And if you wanted to, you can change this title of bin to what it represents, and it's hours studying. And then we can drag this so that it fits. Okay, now, didn't want to do that. I want to drag the whole chart. We can move this if we wanted to. Now, this is something that you could highlight, copy, and paste to a Word document if you needed to. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and move this down here. Okay. Now, the thing with a histogram, excuse me, is we don't need this. We know what that means. We can keep that as histogram, but instead of bin down here, we can change this to hours studying. All right. We need to close the gap on these right here. All right. So you're going to right-click. Well, first of all, again, what I did, highlight the bars. Histogram, the bars should be connected. So right-click. Go to Format, Data Series, and in Gap Width, we need to bring that all the way down to 0. Okay? So now there is no gap. Now, what you also notice, though, is it looks like you really can't see the bars separately. So we can right-click on here, and under Outline, we can give it a different color for Outline. So now it's black if we wanted to. Right-click, and up here, for Fill, we can actually use a different fill if we don't like any of these colors. So we can select whatever color we want to select for that. Okay, so here is our histogram showing the number of hours studying and the frequency for each class. This can simply just be, and I can show you, if we open up a Word document, any of this data, or any of this, can be cut and paste. Just Control C, go to your Word document, Control V. Okay, go back to the Excel. You can cut and paste your frequency distribution. Control C, Control V. And you can just highlight, make sure you're way out. You know, that you're not just highlighting the bars, but you're highlighting the entire thing. Control C, Control V. And you've got your histogram. and you can resize it if you wanted to. Okay, so this was a brief tutorial on how to, 1, get the data analysis tool pack add-in so it shows up in your banner. 2, get the summary statistics from data. 3, create a histogram with a frequency table. All right, and that's done simultaneously. And then also how to close the gap width on the histogram.